Hello, hello, hello. I don't know if you can hear some of that background music. I will close it off for the time being. I was playing a chill playlist, positive songs of the day. Just a little vibe, a little afternoon vibe. I was out for a walk this morning, and one of this guy, Ludovico Ayarado. I wonder how to say that. How do you say, if you guys know who I'm talking about, please correct me. I just, I don't know how to say his name, but we're going to type it in right now to get a pronunciation here. I jammed this guy. Here we go. I'm going to get it right here for you, as long as I don't get any ads. Um, this guy's he plays jazz music. Or jazz, yeah, probably jazz. Let's see how I get it. I really want to get this guy's name right.
We are looking at how to pronounce this name,
Hold on.
as well as how to say more interesting Italian names.
We're getting close. This is Italian.
How do you go about pronouncing it? Ludovico Einaudi.
Ludovico
Einaudi.
Einaudi.
Pianist. Pretty straightforward.
Wow. Oh, he says it's pretty straightforward.
Einaudi, Italian pianist.
I wasn't even close to getting it right. Hold on.
Ludovico.
Ludovico.
Italian pianist. Pretty straightforward.
Let me get one more.
Ludovico.
Hang with me now.
It.
Ludovico Einaudi.
Pianist.
There it is.
Straightforward. Once you know. Ludovico Einaudi.
Wow, there it is. So an Italian pianist, Ludovico. This guy's an absolute stud. You got to look up his music. I ran into him a few months ago, and I play him. I jam him in the mornings. It's an instrumental style. I saw him on one of those. If you guys ever see those, they're on YouTube. They're like these bookstore styles. Like Mac Miller used to play in them, and they're on these little YouTube clips. And I just have always liked that little thing. I saw that guy come up on it, and I've just been jamming him lately. But yeah, I listen to him in the morning when I walk or when I write. And it's the afternoon now. I really don't work on computers in the afternoon. It's just kind of a random day that I had right now. So I was listening to some afternoon chill music, and I like it. I liked what I was listening to when you guys started. But I think music is interesting, right? Because we organize thinking so often based off of sound. So one of the things that I've come to believe or understand over the last couple of years is I think we have a hard time with free will. I don't know how much free will we hold. I think a lot of times I would love to believe that we have free will. So, and I would say that we have free will. I think that we do have free will, but I don't think we exercise free will. If that ties that together. I just don't think that we make decisions as consciously as we think we do. I think that largely decisions that we make is just a byproduct of our environment. And the environment is unconsciously triggering our senses. That's the stimulus, if you will. We're essentially getting this stimuli that's hitting our senses. And the way in which our physiology, our sensory input, our awareness of the senses is taking that information, I think that sparks a behavior and emotion, maybe first, but then either way, it works itself up to our thoughts. And I think that our thoughts are a byproduct of our unconscious stimulation based off of our environment. So I don't know if that's like seen as positive or negative or agree or disagree. I think one of the reasons why I think of music right away when I start thinking about that is how much impact in or how much impact music has on your mood and your emotions. And music is so astronomically large in our emotional bias and the way in which we perceive things, and it just moves us. There's a reason why, musicians are, I don't know, they're like a source from God, the way that they play music. And so much of it it can create such radical emotion towards it. I mean, I've been to maybe, I don't know if I've ever been to a punk rock concert or a rock concert, but I mean, I've definitely been to some rock concerts. Jack White seems familiar to me, big guitarist. I went to something of his a few years ago and it was awesome. They locked our phones in a bag and we just, you were just super into it. A buddy of mine took actually Chelsea went with me. Dave Fisher and Anna, shout out to them, living in Austria right now. But we went into the Jack White concert and just had a blast. But you think of it as how like punk rock music can create somewhat of a mosh pit or just an adrenaline rush as such, or just such aggression of the way that sound is. And then you think of like Taylor Swift and how much influence she can move hundreds of thousands of people in a one environment, and people can just gravitate towards that. And then you look at lyrics that people can remember their entire lives. I still know if you play certain Eminem songs from my childhood, I can rap the entire thing. I can say the entire lyrics and I don't need to listen to it. It's like embedded into my brain, into my subconscious. And when I listen to certain songs like that, I feel a different way. So, for instance, if I listen to heavy metal and I'm lifting with a bunch of guys, or I've been in sports my whole life. If you play some really heavy metal, that's hitting, and you're with a group of guys, and you're squatting or you're having a heavy lift, the intensity that goes into that is so fun. The adrenaline rush that you get from that is incredible. And then you can have moments where you're by yourself and you're listening to rap music and you want to take on the world and you're in your car driving, or maybe it's the sunset and the windows down, you're listening to country music and country music's just hitting you just right in your feels, and you're starting to think about your history and your ex-girlfriend and your the dog that you had growing up that died. Rachel, shout out Rachel. Had to say goodbye to Rachel going into, I think, first grade. One of the worst days ever, but I still remember it. Or your boys, right? You think about growing up with your boys in your hometown, and then you can play reggae music and you're jamming and you're into peace and love and you want to smoke some weed, and that's always a fun vibe too, right? And so if you think about this, where I'm going with this, the creativity that music makes on us, the way that it sparks emotion, that makes us think a certain way, it would make sense to implement music into your day based on the way in which you want to create certain things. So this Italian pianist, who's an absolute stud, like I said, he's like got this intellectual vibe to him, kind of has some emotional pull out of his music. Like I said, it's instrumental, so there's no words. So I've really grown to enjoy it when I write, because I don't want to hear words when I'm writing. I don't want words to impact me. A lot of times I write in silence. That's actually typically when I write the best, is when I write in silence. But sometimes I need some creative flow to just keep me in a high of writing and getting my fingers to type the keyboard and to get words onto the monitor. And so I'll use it, but it's always instrumental. Always. Jazz works a lot with me. Like I said, some lo-fi, chill beats or stuff like that you can find. And I'll play those just to get my mind into a creative space. I think it helps me kind of eliminate the barriers of my thinking, and I can go a little bit further in creativity. And then if I have people over at night, Mount Joy, some indie music, folk music with dinner and that in the background, I've always seen that to just play itself out in just such a relaxing setting. But when it takes me back all the way back to the thought of the impact that it has unconsciously through sound, our auditory system, and the way that that triggers our nervous system and then makes us say things or think certain things. Does it connect with free will? And it doesn't just have to be music. I think music is just a really easy example to use because it's so relevant. It's all over the place, and you feel certain ways based on different songs and lyrics and catchy tunes, loud, quiet rhythms. You connect to it. And so, yeah, I've always thought to myself that the concept of me thinking is based off of the design in which I live in. So years ago, I wish I remember this guy's name. He was an admiral. He was a Navy SEAL, and he had a book called "Make Your Bed, Change Your Life," something along those lines. And you guys can look this up. He also has a speech that you can listen to online too. But he was talking about how one of the things that they enforced in the military and in the army in training was to make your bed. And it seems so funny to think about creating these epic warriors, these strong humans, men and females who can just take on the world, that a lot of their training started with something so simple as making their bed. But as you continuously listen to him, he talks about the importance of making your bed because it's the first thing that you do when you wake up. You create a discipline, a habit by doing that, and you start to feel an accomplishment. The first thing of your do is essentially tackling a task of your life. And completing that task is an accomplishment. And so then he goes on to say, if my memory is correct, you live your entire day, and regardless of how the day works, when you come back home, you are jumping into a made bed. And I think that was one of the completions of his speech. That was one of the wisdom tokens at the finale of what he was trying to express, is that no matter what happens at the end of the day, because of something you did to start the day, you finish the day in a made bed. You finish the day feeling completed. And he talks a lot about how the psychology rubs off on you, and you essentially can sustain that in other areas of your life, or you can become obedient to a process. You can become disciplined, and discipline ends up becoming this sense of freedom. But if I go back to my thought of we are the byproduct of our environment unconsciously, imagine how you think if your bed is never made. So if your sheets are all over the place, your pillows are all over the place, well, now all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier to have clothes all over the place. And as I'm thinking about this, I can right now think of 2 sweatshirts that are on my bedroom floor, and it's frustrating me in the moment. I'm not even in my bedroom, but I can think about things I need to clean up, and I haven't done that. And so it's frustrating right now because I'm talking about it. But if you consider that if your bed's not made and all of a sudden there's clothes on your floor, and then all of a sudden you go into your kitchen and there's dishes in the sink, there's dishes on the tables, there's glasses all over the place, you haven't put things away, and then you go into your office and your office is a mess and there's stuff everywhere. And you're hoarding food, your fridge is overfilled with food, and your pantry is filled up with food and snacks. And so your access to just munching unconsciously can happen regularly throughout the day. You fill your garage fridge with soda, and so now you're unconsciously drinking sugar, or you have plastic water bottles all around you. And so you feel like you need to hydrate, and you grab water out of plastic and you're just drinking plastic water. And you are indoors all day, so you're not outside. I just have a hard time thinking that doesn't create your thinking. It doesn't mirror your perspective to reality. And I think that if you were to live in that exact same home with the description I just gave, and you were to be the same person, but then one day that's how your home looks and your bedroom looks, but then the next day your bedroom is clean, the bed's made, the clothes are off the floor, your fridge is free of excess food. You only have meals for breakfast and dinner, and your snacks is minimal, almost to the point where you can't snack. You have a few things that you could have if you were really hungry and you needed to hold yourself off until you ate dinner. Your dishes were put away, your glasses are put away, you don't have a fridge in your garage for sugary drinks or plastic water bottles. That's altogether eliminated. You have filtered water at your sink, and you drink out of that for the day. I just think that if you were the same person but you lived in both those designs, I think that you would be drastically a different person based off of the design in which you're existing in. If I were to project materially successful is up for debate on what that is. I'm just talking about health and clarity of thought. And I think a lot of that minimalism, that clean, healthy environment has a lot to do with clarity of thinking. I think that you have access to deeper space of consciousness when things around you are designed to help you feel clear-headed and give you more space. And I think a lot of times when our lives are cloudy, it's not necessarily our thoughts that are cloudy, it's our environment that's cloudy. And it's happening in the unconscious. So, I mean, give me your thoughts on that. I think that's a way deeper topic. Specifically, we can talk about that one specifically, but my brain goes right away to even friends and family. And so let's branch off from the home. Obviously, you spend a significant amount of time at your home. So everything in your home, let's stay on the home for one more second. Everything in your home is a mirror to how you think. So if you wake up in the morning and you see the news and you watch the news and it's 7 a.m. and you woke up at 6:45 or 6:30 and you're in front of a news channel, it doesn't matter if the news is good or bad, accurate or not, influential, or again, if it's political, left or right, whatever. The point is that you are now being influenced by outside stimulus. So you're going to react and respond to that in your life, in conversations with people, the way in which you talk to yourself, think to yourself, the perspectives that you carry, the beliefs that you have. So is it really you thinking or having information or understanding, or is it the environment that you've curated that is infiltrating your senses, similar to the music, similar to the bedroom, similar to the cleanliness of your home? And I would argue that it does. I would argue that it makes you make decisions. When you think these decisions are your free will, I would argue against that. I don't think that it's as much free will as it is what's infiltrating your sensory system. And so now if we leave an example like that and we dive a little bit further, let's talk about people. So let's talk about your family or your friends. And unconsciously, something that stood out to me a lot when I was younger, a lot in high school. Because in high school, I grew up, when I was in elementary school and middle school, I was bullied. I kind of stopped getting bullied around middle school. It was more so that at that time I was starting to play sports publicly. And I was playing in the school systems and I was talented. And if you're talented in sports, you should be fine, popularity wise, in my opinion. And so I started to climb out of bullying and climb into a popular situation as I got into middle school, specifically when I got into high school. And I started having a lot of success in high school with sports, because at that point, then I was climbing the ranks of popularity rather quickly. And I finished my high school life, I would probably say, in the popular group. But I was bullied early. And so I had this sense of duality, this experience in my adolescence, my teenage years. Before I went to college, I sort of had experienced both sides of the coin. I experienced isolation, insecurities, including myself, being bullied when I was with people. That made it worse. And I resented people for that. I got angry a lot. And then I've experienced the other side. The other side was I was praised all the time. People laughed at my jokes, whether they were funny or not. People typically conformed to my ideas and my vision because I had popularity power. I had power over situations. I knew, when you're feeling that when you're in high school, you just ride with it. But as you get a little bit older and you get disconnected and you disassociated from your popularity as a high school kid, it doesn't really run out throughout your life. So you kind of you have an ability to dissect that and dissect the psychology of that. And one of the things that I've noticed as an adult that I learned at the end of high school was our conformity towards inside jokes. I really realized that the group that you ran with in high school and in college, or in sports specifically, and that runs up to the professional ranks in sports. I mean, that's tied mostly to my perspective because that's where a lot of my life has been. But if we stick with high school, I noticed that if you were in the in crowd and you could land jokes that the in crowd accepted, you would always get a laugh, always. And if someone could land that joke, you would always find yourself laughing. But if you weren't in the in crowd, or you weren't in that pocket of people and you tried to share that joke, it would almost hurt you. It would hurt your status. And if you laughed at that joke and you weren't in the in crowd, it would also hurt your status. So it's almost like the jokes weren't for the people that weren't in these pockets. And so I started to realize as I got older how that form of language in conformity influenced the way in which you would act and think. So a lot of times when I was growing up at the end of high school, specifically into college, immediately in college, I was good at two things. I was good at partying, and I was good at telling stories that made you laugh. And I could tell jokes regularly. And I got accepted for that. And as I got accepted for that, I learned how to use that to influence slash manipulate, or manipulate slash influence my environment so that I could essentially climb the ladder of survival. Because as long as I used humor, I could always fend off bullying or threats psychologically. I could always be wittier than who was around me, and I could tell these stories. And as long as I was around people who laughed at them or reflected them, I would maintain that level of psychology to uphold my acceptance so that I would be able to survive psychologically. And I think that that's not unique to me. I think we all do that. But when I step back and I really think about that and I study that environment, was that my free will, or was that the feedback that I got from that specific people that I ran with at those times in my life that accepted that sort of behavior? And so my jokes, largely, the majority of my jokes growing up were knocks on myself. And they were positions of me putting myself in a place where I seemed dumb. Because as long as I seemed like a dumb jock who was funny and got chicks and could party and on the weekends could hit a home run or drop 30 on the basketball court, then I was accepted. And my free will was driven out of that environment. So it's different than the music example or the home example or the news example of the stimulus impacting me, but it's not different because even the people that are around you, closest to you, they're another microcosm. I don't know if that's the exact word. Let's just call it a micro. Yeah, they're a microcosm of a macrocosm type thing. So I like the word microcosm. They're a microcosm of this example of your unconscious, because people that you're around so regularly, they end up you form into each other through osmosis. You essentially become the same person, which is why the inside jokes last in your inner groups and inner circles. In the circles that I ran with, and these guys are a lot of people, I'm still so close with people I grew up with. So this has nothing to do with them. This has everything to do with my perspective of the situation. And how many times in my life, especially in high school, in early college, the amount of things that I said and talked about that wasn't me, but it was me. And I was doing that because my environment allowed such behaviors. And is that conscious or is that unconscious? To me, I would consider that unconscious. I don't think that we are strong enough individually to consciously make our own decision or form our own thought. I think that we have glimpses of our own thought and glimpses of our own decision. And I think that that's the concept of intuition. I think that we intuitively get moments. I think that we intuitively have moments in which we connect with the essence of ourself, our authentic self. But the paradox to that is that when we connect with ourselves, how do you justify that outside of yourself? And I think that's the confusion of authenticity and free will. Because whenever I've made my own decision or I've had my own thought, I can't justify that to humanity because humanity can't hear that. Humanity can only hear conformist style thinking. And I think that's why there's a great quote by Naval. I believe it's by Naval. He says that genius will only speak to single small groups of people, where those who talk to the uneducated or the dumb. That's not his quote. I'm butchering his words, but he's on this. He planted the seed and to get to me to say this. Those who talk to the dumb, large scale, are talking at surface level. And he might even have said it like that. I know it's close, but the point he was making was that when you appeal to the masses, you live at the surface. And when you don't appeal to the masses, you're in the depth. You're at the opposite. And I think that that's a really confusing place to be. And I think that's why it makes free will so difficult to acquire, because my own decision making cannot be justified by me explaining that to anybody, any human, at least my parents, my wife, my kid, my friends, people who've known me my entire lives. I cannot justify my decision making because you wouldn't understand it, because you don't see the world the way that I see it. You can't interpret the way that I see it. And vice versa. I can't see the world the way you see it or understand the world the way that you see it. And so therefore, whatever rules our unconscious environment will get us to conform into agreeing with each other on specific topics that exist in reality. And that's how we play this game out. That's how I think someone becomes a political left and a political right. And they find the inner circle that accepts, metaphorically, their inside jokes. And if you can speak that language of that group unconsciously, then you're accepted. And so then you get comfortable over here and you live in it. And then if you're over here on the other side, if you're somebody who lives unhealthy, you're not hanging out with people who are healthy. It's just pretty simple. It's one of the main things I learned about sobriety is I don't hang out with people who drink alcohol. I mean, I have dinner with people every now and then who have a glass of wine or a beer maybe or a drink. I've certainly been to events, social events. I've been to games or concerts where there's beers being passed around and people are drinking beers. But as far as becoming sober over the last couple of years, yeah, I don't have anybody that I hang out with who drinks because it doesn't make sense for either party. It's they don't want to hang out with me and I don't want to hang out with them. Now we can still love each other. We're just not going to roll in the same circle because we can't. In fact, the people that I hang out with don't drink. And one of the things that we talk about unconsciously is how good life feels without drinking. But that doesn't mean that people who are drinking and talk about how good life is drinking are wrong. And that doesn't mean that we're right. It just is a way that we exist. And I think it has a lot to do with our ideology around free will and how inaccurate we are to thinking that we have our own thoughts. I really do. I think we're just a byproduct of the environment and the design and the fabric of the structure in which we're currently in. And I think that there's times in your life where you transcend out of that structure and you evolve into another structure. Now that evolution materially can be good and it can be bad. You can go from a really healthy, positive tribe and you could move because of circumstances. Job, we'll use this for an example. You could have a job that transfers you and you move into another position. You find yourself in another community and you don't think much of it because you're trying to get accepted, you're trying to mix in, you're trying to figure out the language, and all of a sudden this tribe, you find out a year later that it's unhealthy and it's negative and it's gossipy, but you didn't know, and it could be too late. You could be so ingrained in it that you just become a byproduct of that group, and you have moments of silence where you're like, oh, I remember not feeling this way. And it could have been years prior when you felt positive, because now you feel negative. And then you get out of that and you transcend, you go somewhere else and you find positivity again. And you transcend out of that, you find negative, whatever it is. It's just a bouncing, leaping process from environment to environment our entire lives. And I don't think that we decide. I think I just swallowed honestly, I might have just swallowed like a beard hair of my own. Something feels like it just got caught in my throat for a second there. But going back to my thought is, I think that we just sort of bounce back and forth, and we experience life like that. And I think that our thinking, our intellect, our decision making it's more so a mirror. I like using the word mirror in this entire conversation. It's more so a mirror to our intuition, to our gut feeling. So when we're really connected to our gut feeling, when we're really connected to our inner guide, our wisdom, if you will, then I think our intellect, it just results in that inner landscape that we have in that current moment. And so sometimes in our life, we're making a lot of really good decisions, and sometimes in our lives, we're making a lot of bad decisions, and sometimes it's just pretty neutral, and we're just sort of floating around in space. And sometimes we're really radical, and sometimes we're really conservative. Sometimes we're really healthy, and sometimes we're not healthy, and sometimes we're in between. And sometimes we're really excited, sometimes we're really nervous. And all these things take place, and I'll wrap it up and tie it into a bow here. All these things take place for our awareness to observe and notice and become mindful of the human experience in the environments in which we live in the environments in which we exist in. And that noticing becomes the silence to our free will. And the silence of our free will is a connection to source. It's a truth teller, and it doesn't need to be justified. In its own sort of way, I think that's how we become ourselves. That I can be me by never feeling as if I need to tell you who that is or what that is. So I was a little nervous going into this one, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't know where this one was going to go. I've opened up my computer because I was going to talk about something that I'm writing in my book. More so because I sat down and I didn't know what I was going to talk about. And then obviously we went to that Italian fella because I had my computer open and I had him on the background because I was listening to him this morning. So I guess I got to credit music on this one. Shout out to music. Shout out for the love that you bring to the world, humanity, the war on love and hate, and which one we are and the emotions that we experience as an organism. And I really appreciate you, music. Thank you for always being there. Cheers to all of you guys. Love you guys and hope you're enjoying your music. Take care.